Well, we've hit that 1 o'clock hour. We can get everything rolling here. Um, Hello and welcome everyone to the Montana 3 Highway Corridor, Corridor Study Virtual Public Meeting number 2. My name is Jackson Lang. I am the MDT Corridor Study Planner and the MDT Project Manager for the study. This study's purpose is to develop a comprehensive long-range plan for managing the corridor and determine what could be done to improve the corridor based on needs, public and agency input, and financial feasibility. This is a collaborative process with local jurisdictions, resource agencies, MDT, federal highways, and the public to identify transportation needs and potential solutions given environmental constraints, financial feasibility, constructability, and corridor context. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and look forward to hearing your comments or concerns with the corridor. I would like to now introduce Lisa Olmsted, the Public Involvement Manager with Dell. Lisa, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jackson. Um, so, Jackson, like he said, is the MDT project manager. Sarah Patterson on the Dell team is the project manager, and I am leading the public involvement efforts for this project. And before we get started, I'll go over just a couple minor housekeeping things. Your microphones are muted and your video is going to stay off for the duration of the meeting. That is with the intent of improving bandwidth and to help the meeting run more smoothly for everyone. The chat feature is also disabled for the duration of the meeting. We will be fielding questions using the Q&A function, which is the little chat bubble at the bottom of your screen with the question mark in it. Please type your questions at any point. Our team is going to be monitoring those, but we will predominantly be answering those questions during the designated Q&A period at the end of the presentation. If you do have questions specific to your parcel, please send those via email or give us a call so that we can speak to your property specifically. Following the meeting, you're also welcome to offer thoughts and ask questions using the contact information provided at the end of the presentation. If you're anything like me, you'll think of those questions after everything has wrapped up. And finally, it's important to note that this meeting is being recorded and will be added to the study website for future reference or for anybody that wasn't able to attend today. So just important to recognize that all of MDT's efforts, including this study, contribute towards the goal of Vision Zero, working towards zero fatalities and zero serious injuries on Montana's roads. And this meeting is held pursuant to Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which ensures that no person shall be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefit of, or otherwise be subjected to discrimination on the basis of a protected status under any MDT program or activity. All right, with that, I think I will pass the mic over to Sarah to really get into the reason we're all here today.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. So I'll give a quick overview of what the agenda is. We'll first talk through what a planning study is, what the court store study limits are, and then the study schedule. Then we'll dive into some corridor specific needs and then our recommendations and key findings, and then wrap it up with next steps. So this is our corridor study limits. We're looking at 5 miles of Montana 3, which is the northwestern gateway to the city of Billings. And the corridor study extends from Apache Trail over to the East Airport Road roundabout. The western half of the corridor is more rural in nature with a 70-mile-per-hour speed limit. But as you head further east of Zimmerman Park, the corridor transitions to more of an urban arterial and has a more dense number of side street approaches. So this corridor is being studied for a few reasons. Well, it's a high volume corridor and a part of the national highway system. And traffic is expected to increase on Montana 3 with new development proposed north of Montana 3. We also want to understand projected impacts associated with the recently completed Skyway Drive. That connection was completed in 2024 and now connects the Zimmerman Trail roundabout to the Heights neighborhood. So understanding that connection was a key part of this corridor study process. And then lastly, there are several regional trails that converge at that intersection of Montana 3 and Zimmerman Trail. And so understanding that there are many bicyclists and pedestrians on the corridor that also need to be accommodated. So this is kind of the life cycle of a project that you see on this slide. We're in the planning stage. And so as you can see here, the planning is done before design occurs, before right-of-way acquisition, environmental compliance, and construction. So if funding is identified, then it would move into the project development phase, which would be our design and environmental compliance, and then into the construction. So throughout the entire life cycle of the planning, design, and construction, we involve our transportation and resource agencies, as well as public input. In terms of the schedule for this specific study, we kicked it off in January, and we are now sitting in November at our second public meeting. We had a number of milestone reports to get to this point, and all of those reports are on the study website. So we had the environmental scan and the existing projected conditions report. That was really what we presented in that first meeting, which we held in June. And then this meeting today is really going to focus on improvement options report and access management plan recommendations. And then after the public meeting, we're intending to, collect all of the public feedback and then finalize with a final corridor study report summarizing. So really the overall purpose of this study was to identify corridor-specific needs, as well as our short-term, long-term improvements to address those needs, and then develop planning level cost estimates and identify funding sources. So the last kind of final piece that's unique to this study as well is that we did develop an access management plan for the corridor. And in terms of our needs and objectives for Montana 3 specifically, we have our first primary need was to improve corridor traffic safety. Over the 5 years where we looked at crash data, there were 115 total crashes, 29 resulted in minor injury, and 3 resulted in serious or fatal injury. And so understanding about half of those crashes occurred at intersections, and a quarter of all crashes were rear end collisions. So a lot of the improvement options that we are presenting today really aim to reduce fatalities and serious injuries in support of Vision Zero, and then also reduce our vehicle conflict and improve safety at our non-motorized crossings. The other primary need for the corridor we identified was improving traffic operations. So in the existing condition, there's about 12,000 vehicles per day on Montana 3. And if you look at traffic 20 years ago, in 2004, there were about 6,000 vehicles per day. And then conversely, projecting out 20 years in the future, in 2045, we're expecting about 19,000 vehicles per day. So that's an average growth rate of about 2% growth per year we're expecting over the next 20 years. And so we're expecting to see failing traffic operations at many of our study intersections looking out into the future. So a lot of our improvement options are really aimed at accommodating that future travel demand, as well as the existing, improving our intersection operations, improving our non-motorized mobility and accessibility, but all the while maintaining reasonable access for adjacent businesses and residences. And then, of course, there are a lot of other considerations in any project. We need to consider how the project would impact our environmental resources, our drainage, our constructability, adjacent utilities, funding, and then maintenance and operations of improvements. And then lastly, making sure all of the recommended improvements are consistent with local plans and developments. So now to dive into those improvement options. And like I mentioned, we identified a range, which are all kind of summarized in this graphic here. But we'll start with the corridor widening as the first. So that's what you see here. adding a center turn lane on Montana 3, extending from Rod and Gun Club Road to about 2 miles east. So the purpose of that improvement is to really allow those left turning movements on the corridor to have a lane where they can safely wait for a gap in traffic to make their left turn maneuver. In terms of our intersection improvements, we're recommending an intersection upgrade to the existing roundabout at Skyway Drive, upgrading that to a two-lane roundabout in the future to accommodate future demand, as well as adding a pedestrian tunnel on that east leg to connect the north and south sides of Montana 3. And then at Rod and Gun Club Road and AJ Way, we're recommending new roundabouts. And again, that's to accommodate not only existing traffic, but future traffic. For example, there is National Guard development planned on the north leg of AJ Way, which is feeding the demand for that future improvement. At Huey Way, we're recommending left turn lanes and a right turn lane into that northern leg. Uh, a similar reason with the forecasted development impact are expected north of Huey Way. That's to improve corridor traffic operations and intersection operations. And then lastly, at Southview Drive and Overlook Drive, those are two intersections which are key access points for the west side of the airport, recommending left turn lanes at this point in time there. But overall, what we're recommending for those specific intersections is that we reevaluate improvement options there once a traffic impact study is conducted for planned development, which is expected to occur at the airport. And then other improvement options not depicted would be our access management, and I'll touch on our access management plan recommendations at the end of the presentation, and then travel demand management. So travel demand management is something our employers on the corridor can implement to just reduce the number of vehicles on the corridor during peak periods. So that would include, for example, reduced work weeks or flexible work hours or remote work, anything that reduces the amount of commuters on the corridor during those peak hours. And then the one other improvement, which I'll touch on later on in the presentation, is improving trail crossing site distance on Skyline Trail, and that's that dotted line here. So I'll dive in just a little bit more detail on this road widening recommendation. So we're only recommending that the road be widened in that extent on the eastern part of the corridor where we do have a higher density of driveways and side street approaches. And that when we do widen, that we would widen to the north so we don't impact the existing Skyline Trail, which is on the south side of the corridor. In the existing condition, we have two 12-foot travel lanes with a 3.5-foot shoulder. And what we're recommending, again, is that center turn lane, again, to allow those left turning vehicles to have a separate left turn lane to where they can safely wait to make their left turn maneuver. Also recommending that the shoulders be widened from the existing 3.5-foot to the 6-foot, which would align with the baseline design criteria for a principal arterial. On the east leg of the Zimmerman Trail roundabout, there's currently a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is what you see in that top image. And what we're recommending here, like I mentioned, is a pedestrian underpass or pedestrian tunnel, which would connect the Skyline Trail on the south side to the Skyway Drive path on the north side. And again, this would occur when the intersection is upgraded to a two-lane roundabout. Other multimodal improvements include improvements at the Skyline Trail crossings. So the Skyline Trail crosses 10 different side street approaches or driveways on the south side of Montana 3. And there were some recent improvements at these trail crossings. So for example, what you see here on this image, you can see that in the recent last 2 months, they've added striped crosswalks as well as revise the signing for pedestrians and bicyclists. And so the benefit of adding those crosswalks is it does promote the awareness of non-motorized users on the corridor, make sure those drivers are cognizant they need to be looking for non-motorized users in the crosswalk. But we do feel it needs to be stated that non-motorized users still need to be aware that there is the potential for a conflict with vehicle anytime you enter an intersection. Overall, what we're recommending here is improving the sight distance at these 10 crossings. Again, improving sight distance can mean, making sure there's no long or tall grass which impedes sight distance or piles of snow, anything that can reduce the sight line for those vehicles making turning movements in and out of these driveways. And then other thing I wanted to mention here is that when we do add those left turn lanes in the future on Montana 3, that'll again improve safety at a lot of these intersections, allowing those vehicles turning into the side street a place to safely wait and look for a gap in traffic. Next, wanted to switch gears and just talk about our access management plan, which was prepared as part of this corridor study. So a brief definition, corridor, our access management is essentially the coordinated planning and design of access between roads and development. And it's important to provide safe and efficient movement of people and goods. And really the overall arching goal is to reduce the number of conflict points on the corridor. And so without it, growing corridors can deteriorate functionally and aesthetically, which is what you see in this bottom image, where we have a very dense number of driveways with access directly onto Montana 3. And a situation like this has significant impacts on our corridor traffic safety and our corridor traffic operations. So the overall goal of implementing access management is to promote safety for our motorized and non-motorized users, while also improving mobility. So maintaining efficient traffic flow on Montana 3 and minimizing delay for through traffic. And then the other benefits are preserving property values and attracting economic development and supporting neighborhood livability. And that's just essentially preserving the long-term functionality and investment in the system. So in terms of our overall access management strategies, these are some basic strategies to reduce the number of conflict points on the corridor. So one example is a business which has two access points. If we can remove one, that reduces one of the conflict points we have on the corridor. In a similar way, you can see here where you have two adjacent businesses which share a property line. You can see that they can have a single access on that property line to access both businesses as a way to reduce the number of conflict points. And then similarly, having a rear or frontage road access is also an easy way to reduce the number of access points on the corridor and allowing those vehicles to access the business through a side street. So we did provide recommendations for the entire 5 mile corridor in the access management plan, but we're just going to focus on one very short segment and just to provide an example of what that access management plan recommendation includes. So this is, before we dive in, I'll give a quick rundown of what the legend is showing us. So the blue indicates a private approach, which would be a residence or a business. The purple would be a public named street. And then the orange would be a field or an agricultural approach. And so you can see here, there are some different shapes as well. And you can tell some of those are for example, that hexagon is for the joint use, which would be two parcels, which have a shared access, or the square represents a write-in restricted access. So we'll first start just to walk through some of these examples of approach 31. You can see that approach in the existing condition is just very slightly offset from approach 32. So what we're recommending in that specific instance is just relocating approach 31 to be slightly to the east, to be directly opposite approach 32. And reason for this type of improvement is it reduces the conflict between two left-turning vehicles entering Montana 3 at the same time from the north and south legs. And so this is really a safety-driven improvement. And then you can see at access 34, um, that access would be impacted by the splitter islands of the potential future roundabout at AJ Way. So at that location, that particular approach would be restricted to a right in, right out in the future. And then you can see there's three field approaches that we're recommending closure of. And reason for closing those is they do have alternate access to their parcel from a side street. So again, that's just a couple of examples. Didn't run through the entire 5 miles of recommendations that were made, but I did also want to clarify that there are no construction projects planned at this time to implement the access management plan. But essentially, this plan is really going to be used to inform improvements that are made down the road as development occurs or construction projects occur in the future. So just to kind of close out the presentation, I just wanted to kind of show you where we're at, kind of in the grand scheme of things. We're approaching the end of this planning study, and after we consider all public comments, what we'll do is we'll develop a final corridor study report that will be posted on the website. And then upon completion of the study, identified improvements may be advanced into design and construction phases as funding allows. But no funding sources have been identified at this time. So hopefully that's a good overview of kind of what the corridor study was and what we're recommending. But we do want to make sure we have time for questions and open it up for comments if anyone wants to add anything in the chat.
So we do not have any current questions in the Q&A, but now is your time to drop those in. Let's see. Oh, yep. Mark Parker just asked, are there any speed limit changes recommended? Great answer or great question, Mark.
Yeah, I can field that one. So, with any speed change, it goes through MDT's traffic analysis unit, where basically we look at existing speeds on the corridor, and then we would look at how changes in the corridor, for example, changes at the intersections may impact speeds in the future. So typically we'll wait and do a speed study after an intersection improvement is made to see how that impacted speeds on the corridor. But yeah, in general, it's assumed that when we do convert some of those intersections to roundabouts in the future, that speeds would be reduced on the corridor naturally. So that's kind of how uh, the speed limits question would be handled, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Mark, if you have any follow-up questions on that, feel free to type them in. Mike asks, were right-hand turn lanes talked about or considered?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we did recommend a right lane at the Huey Way intersection. Again, that's to accommodate that future development traffic where we're expecting a high number of right turn movements. At the other locations, we didn't necessarily see the right turn traffic volume needed to warrant a right turn lane. A lot of those, particularly the residential side streets on the south side of the intersection, um, there were fewer than five right turn vehicles per hour, and there is a certain threshold to meet a right turn lane warrant. So that's kind of what we considered when we developed those recommendations for turn lanes was uh, the existing, but also the future forecasted right turn movements at each location.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Um, let's see. Jackson, this is probably a question that you may be able to answer. One person asks whether we will provide a list of attendees for this meeting. Is that appropriate? I guess I can say we have 31 attendees in addition to the 6 panelists in the meeting right now.
Yeah, I don't see any problem providing a list. I don't think we will include any of that contact information, just a list of names.
Sure. So, Janice, if you want to just shoot me an email, I can reply with that list of attendees. And let's see, Leslie asked, please cover the Skyline Trail access again. She's unclear if there will be a shoulder or right turn lane eastbound once the widening is done.
Yeah, so um, in terms of what we're recommending for that eastbound right turn lane, at this point in time, just because the volumes we observed, the traffic at those specific, at, at least the ones I'm thinking of, for example, the Stony Ridge, as well as the let's see, we can pull that open, but the those residential side streets on the south side of the corridor, the right turn movements into those driveways were generally less than 3 to 5 vehicles per hour. And just with such a low level of right turning traffic, we can't implement right turn lanes everywhere. We kind of prioritize them where there are the highest number of right turning movements. So that's why we did not recommend those eastbound right turn lanes with this corridor study report. But yeah, let me know if you had a follow-up on that question.
Okay, Mike asked a follow-up question, just circling back to his original question was, were right-hand turn lanes talked about or considered? And his follow-up question on the response to that is, he said, I was thinking more for bike ped safety along the trail.
Yeah, I think you're wondering in the context of adding a right turn lane to improve bike and ped safety, I'm guessing.
Yes, he says.
Okay. Yeah, I think I think there's some additional thought that could be put into that, but I think at this time, because those right turn volumes were just so low, um, and there's not additional growth in traffic expected south of the intersection, we weren't recommending them, but also recognizing that a lot of those turning, a, a lot of those conflicting pedestrian and vehicle conflicts, may be mitigated in the future with a lot of the improvements we're recommending. For example, the roundabout at AJ Way, or at Rod and Gun Club Road. So again, understanding that there are some improvements going in as well that will help mitigate some of those safety concerns. And also having those vehicles all um, making those right turn maneuvers at a larger intersection like AJ Way, for example.
So the next question is, why didn't you talk about recommendations west of the Zimmerman roundabout?
We do have several access management recommendations west of Zimmerman Trail. So we do have some that were covered in the access management plan report. Um, we didn't have necessarily identified any intersection improvements west of there. Of course, the Apache Trail intersection is the major intersection on the west side of the corridor. That intersection, when we projected traffic out to future conditions, was still expected to operate at a pretty um, good level of service, so minimal delay for those vehicles at that location, which already has right and left turn lanes on Montana 3. We did, however, as part of this corridor study, identify the Zimmerman Park access is maybe being a potential location where traffic counts could be conducted in the future to understand if there's the need for improvements at that trailhead intersection. But that's kind of a summary of what we looked at on the west side.
Sarah, building on that, kind of a related question, could you clarify how much actual traffic data you had on the segment west of Zimmerman Trail? And this person says they found data from one day at Apache Trail, but did not locate anything at Zimmerman Park. So that probably touches on what you just spoke about.
Exactly, yeah. So we did 1 day of traffic counts at Apache Trail, and we did not collect traffic counts at the Zimmerman Park trailhead. So that data collection and analysis would be part of a future project.
Okay. Um, was there any consideration given to school bus pickups along Highway 3? SD2 has bus stops on the highway due to access issues on the residential side streets. We worry about safety in the dark with high rates of speed.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess maybe we could follow up after the meeting because I don't think I'm curious like which locations you're thinking of and then exactly what the school bus maneuver is at those specific locations. So yeah, hard to know, I guess, not knowing the full details there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Lindsay, would you send me an email and we can have some follow-up communications on that? Good information, good comment. Thanks, Lindsay. She just said you bet. Um, okay, one more question. So if if anyone has any other questions, we've only got one more in the queue. Oh, two now. Will the number of right-hand turns is low? Sorry, let me start that over. While the number of right-hand turns is low, I believe we should still look at right turn lanes to ensure vehicles that are trying to turn right and are being quote unquote tailgated can turn safely without endangering trail users.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, let's see. One more question. How do the physical constraints associated with Zimmerman Trail and the traffic below the rim rocks impact this analysis?
Yeah, that's a good point. We were really constrained in our improvement options at the Zimmerman Trail roundabout, just knowing that the south leg of that roundabout is constrained, capacity constrained in terms of very difficult to widen that south leg. Um, so at this point in time, what we recommended was a two-lane roundabout, which would have two approach lanes, but only a single exit lane on each leg of the roundabout. And even with that improvement, we are seeing some delay when we forecast out to 2045 at the roundabout. Um, so what we recommended overall was kind of looking at, first of all, seeing how the development occurs on Skyway Drive in the future, and then how that development actually occurs impacts future traffic. So I agree there's a little bit um, fuzzy on that analysis with not understanding, how much development will occur on Skyway Drive or when it will occur. But you're right, that south leg of Zimmerman Trail roundabout is definitely a constraint for addressing long-term improvements at that intersection.
That is currently all of our questions. Oh, one more. Is there an example of an existing two-lane roundabout that has two entry lanes and one exit lane?
Yeah, we attempted to show what that would look like in the improvement options report with a very conceptual drawing. I could get you a kind of like a more detailed standard drawing for what that would look like if that's helpful to visualize. Um,
That sounds
yeah.
good. And
Mhm.
Leslie, we've got your contact information. Curtis, you might know if there is an example of a two-lane entry, one-lane exit roundabout in the Billings area. Oh,
Yeah, and if you can picture it, it's more like providing a right-only lane and then a through left lane. So that's kind of a summary of what it would look like on each approach.
and Curtis, we can see you're unmuted but cannot hear you.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
There you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to say that at Highway 3 and Zimmerman Trail, um, there's an example of that, and I want to say maybe even Monad and Shiloh might have something similar to that, where the east-west on Monad is splits two lanes, but the receiving end only has one.
Great. Okay, what specific safety and mobility concerns were identified west of Zimmerman Trail?
Let's see. So in terms of safety and mobility, like I mentioned, I think we didn't have necessarily any intersections of concern west of Zimmerman Trail, again, because it is more rural on that western side with less development. But we also understand Apache Trail is an intersection which has the potential for a lot of future growth. So that intersection, we didn't recommend any improvements at this point in time based on what we know, but as as development progresses or things change, recommendations at that Apache Trail intersection may change as well. And then I think the other intersection we had flagged for future study was the the Zimmerman Park access, which again we had talked about earlier.
Okay. And one person says, as west of Zimmerman is part of this study, when will landowners be a part of the discussion? So far, they have no input. I think this is a prime opportunity to have input. Also, send email and we can have a follow-up conversation. It's probably a great opportunity to mention that the in-person open house, which of course will have the same content shared as what you saw today, but in more of an open house format. So that is a great opportunity to come and visit with the project team members there. So that event is tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Aviation Department Operations Center. That's at 2281 Overlook Drive. And if you aren't familiar with that location, there is a map on the study website. And you can access that study website using the QR code that's on your screen currently. Also worth noting is on the study website are all the documents that we've been talking about, all the documents that Sarah spoke about, the access management plan, the recommendation options, all of those are available currently. Okay, I'm trying to get back to the questions. We have a couple more. Did this report consider the future development projections outlined within the Inner Belt Loop corridor study from 2020?
We did consider those, yes. So when we looked at our traffic forecasting at that intersection, we kind of looked at what that prior study had identified for future growth on Skyway Drive. And we kind of did what's called a sensitivity analysis to see if what we're recommending would work with higher volumes and how much higher volumes can it accommodate for that proposed roundabout. And so I think we definitely considered them and used that study as a valuable piece of information to feed our analysis.
Oh, Jeff with the airport noted that Airport Road into the 27th, or into, yeah, the North 27th is a two-lane entry, one-lane exit roundabout as well. Thanks for that, Jeff. And this is probably a question for Jackson. What property owners have you consulted regarding the proposed access eliminations or modifications? Or perhaps John wants to chime in on that, on the access management plan.
Yeah, I'll hand that to John, but all the property owners adjacent to the corridor have or should have received the landowner letter, and which we also provide the opportunity for meetings like this and tomorrow to discuss those. But I will let John speak on that more.
Um, so yeah, like you said, we put out the public landowner notification letter, and really this format, we're asking for landowner comments to be sent to us. Um, so I think this is a good chance for landowners to provide their specific comments and specific needs. One thing I do want to kind of bring and just highlight again is that this is a the access management plan is a planning level document. It's kind of to help guide um, future future development and help local governments kind of try to plan where approaches along the corridor might be where we might be looking at reducing and helping with safety and that sort of thing. There are no construction activities associated with this document. So um, we're talking about reduction of approaches, but this would happen like if you were to come forward with a development plan for your property. We're not, as part of this process, MDT is not actively going to come out and remove approaches, as soon as this document goes final. It would be like a redevelopment type of thing, where we would have the chance to work with the developers and landowners to find out what accesses work best for them. This isn't it, this is a plan. It's not set in stone. This is the way it's going to be, and plans do change based on what things look like as development comes forward. So just kind of my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, this is probably a follow-up question to John. This person says, based upon this response, it seems that making recommendations at this time is premature since there is little data to guide the recommendation.
Um, I I guess I can see that, but we when we made these kind of recommendations, just looked at general kind of access management guidelines that are used throughout the state on other projects. So, uh, like we said, this is a planning level document that we're just kind of looking to guide future decisions, or at least help on future decisions. So, I'd be more than welcome if you have specific locations that you don't agree with some of the guidelines. Please make comments and we can address those.
Thanks, John. And this person elaborated, she said, at least as far as west of Zimmerman Trail. Okay, that is all the open questions we currently have. Again, we would be very happy to see you all at the in-person open house tomorrow evening from 4 to 6 at the Aviation Operations Center. Again, more information on that is available on the study website. Also, we would certainly encourage you to take a look at the documents. There's been a lot of effort that has gone into developing them, and would encourage you to take a look and provide your comment. Help us fine tune them before they're finalized. I guess as we're wrapping up, Curtis, do you have any final comments that you'd like to share on behalf of the Billings district?
Nothing specific. I would just say thank you for participating in this. This is your feedback is very important to the process. And so, yeah, thank you.
And still no questions. I think we have gotten everything, at least for now. We would certainly encourage you to send us emails or give us a call if you have any follow-up questions that you think of after this. And with that, Jackson, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And we, like it's been said before, we encourage you to participate in tomorrow's open house. It'll be more of a no presentation, just some poster boards and discussion with any of our team members. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you, Dowell, Sarah, and Lisa and Sydney for putting this together, and it went very well.
Alrighty, yeah. One final reminder, this video will be added to the website in a couple days. We just have to fine tune it. So if you know of anyone that missed the opportunity, you can direct them there. All right, with that, we can probably, we will go ahead and end the meeting.